I built this beautiful blog website in Go and hosted it on localhost port 3000. Unfortunately, it is already being plagued by bot farms posting these totally real spam comments. What can we do to stop those pesky clunkers from spoiling our website with their fraudulent comments? One option would be to just slap a Cloudflare reverse proxy on top of our artisanal tech stack and call it a day, but then this video would be embarrassingly short. Another option would be to use a software as a service CAPTCHA solution such as Google reCAPTCHA, Cloudflare Turnstile, or HCAPTCHA. But honestly, all of these kind of suck in one way or another. With these solutions, the user is going to have to click on a lot of bicycles or find a Vietcong gorilla in the jungle, and then the corporate is still going to track everyone with cookies. In this video, I'm going to explore an alternative solution called CAPTCHA, so alternative CAPTCHA. Unlike the corporate solutions, there is no license agreement, no puzzles, and no cookies. CAPTCHA is entirely self-hosted, based on a few very simple cryptographic functions, and is free and open source software. Both the JavaScript widget and the backend Go library are MIT licensed, which means you can remix and modify the software in any way you like. Heck, you can even remove the CAPTCHA branding and resell it as your own product. So how does it work? Well, it's really quite simple. The CAPTCHA challenge is based on the idea of proof of work. It's very much like mining Bitcoin, except that the difficulty is much lower. In the case of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network is like a genie that's thinking of a number, and if you guess it, you hit the jackpot. In the case of CAPTCHA, the server is the genie and the client's job is to find the number that the genie is thinking of. And I'm going to explain this in more detail once we reach the implementation phase. So let's start by opening up the project. You can find the project at github.com/moros/go-CAPTCHA-video, and I'm going to also add a link to this repository in the description below. This project is using Mise to install software, so we will basically just have to run Mise install once. And this is assuming that you are using Mise JDX DEV. It's a tool I use to install more or less everything on my machines. Right, and then I'm going to also use Mise to set up some environment variables. So, no, not this one, Mise. So we're going to be using SQLite because it saves us a lot on setup and maintenance. And we're going to use Goose to run migrations, and then we have a few tasks. There is one task called db setup, and that runs all the migrations and executes seeds. And then there is a task called db reset, and that removes the existing migration and reruns the setup. So as a demonstration, I'm going to run Mise run db reset, and then this basically just deleted the existing database and then executed these migrations, and then run the seed script. And now if we run mod, we can see the data is here. The data is still here, and yeah, this seed data just contains one of my old database posts, and then there are a few comments which I basically found. These are inspired by real spam comments I found in an old database. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first install the server integration library for CAPTCHA, and in this case it's this library called CAPTCHA-org/CAPTCHA-lib-go, and this is going to, I'm going to run this command. Go get dash, oh no, wait. I'm just going to paste this command and run it. And this installs the server integration. And then in the flow basically consists of a few, the flow consists of like two steps. Firstly, we're going to generate a challenge, and this challenge is like a genie thinking of a number, and the genie tells the genie we are really generating a seed, and this seed is a random string, and it may contain some additional parameters, for example the expiration time as a Unix timestamp, and then we can set difficulty. And what the difficulty is really describing is that there will, if the difficulty is set to 100,000, then there will be 100,000 possible solutions between, or technically 100,001 possible solutions from 0 to up to this number. And then the library is going to hash the salt, so the random string, with that random number it is the genie is thinking of, and then it's going to return this hash and the salt to the client, and then it is the job of the client to come up with the same number that the genie is thinking of. And based on my simple benchmarks, it's going to take about 50 milliseconds or maybe 100 milliseconds in Go, and then it's going to take about a second in JavaScript. So if you really want to solve a lot of these CAPTCHA challenges, you can just do it in a, you can just write a Go script, and it's going to be much faster than doing it in JavaScript. But so this challenge will not really stop proper bots. It's not going to stop smart bots. It's just going to slow them down. Whenever you want to post something, you're going to have to do some work. You can optimize it, but you're still going to have to coordinate to do some work. So this is essentially just going to what was the word? This is going to put a rate limit on those clankers, and then if you really have some problems with bots, you can use the solution called CAPTCHA Sentinel, and then this is like a more what was the word? It's a more comprehensive solution. So it's going to do things like keep a record of IP addresses or geolocation and all of this. And Sentinel is actually a closed sourced and commercial solution. And I've never used it, but I think it can be a good choice. And then, and also it's self-hosted, so you can use it without giving data to some nasty third-party company. You just need to install some software on your server. But we're not going to use Sentinel in this video. We're just going to use the simplest proof of work solution. So okay, I'm going to make it a bit smaller. We're going to have to implement a controller, and this controller is going to generate a challenge, and it's going to return it to the client. And this is necessary in order to integrate the widget, the CAPTCHA widget, with with the server. So this is going to be the first step. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it CAPTCHA controller and package handlers, and I'm going to create a new struct. I'm going to call it same as the file, type CAPTCHA controller. This is going to be a struct, and in this struct we are going to need to store a secret, and that secret is this HMAC key, and this HMAC key has to be a high entropy random number, a random binary, and in this application we can just generate a random number. So yeah, I'm going to store the HMAC key in here, and it's going to be a binary, and then we're going to implement a constructor function, so func CAPTCHA controller, and it's going to take the HMAC key, which is a byte, and it's going to return a pointer to this CAPTCHA controller, and like this, and then we're going to implement one action on this controller, and this is going to just return the challenge. So I'm just going to call it this function challenge with a pointer receiver to this CAPTCHA controller, and then I'm going to call it challenge. And since I'm using echo, I'm going to this function is going to take a parameter of echo context, and it's going to return an error. So in here I need to generate a challenge, CAPTCHA create challenge with CAPTCHA options. The HMAC key it actually expects a string, which is weird, but okay. Then we are going to pass a number. So I'm going to actually create a file in this configuration package. I'm going to call it CAPTCHA.go, and I'm going to hard code the difficulty as a number here. So CAPTCHA difficulty, I'm going to set it to 500,000 based on my initial benchmarks. This is a pretty good number for most devices, and this is going to be config CAPTCHA difficulty, and then if error is not nil, we're just going to return this error, because realistically there is not much we can do. And then we can just return JSON HTTP status OK, and the challenge, and the echo framework is just going to serialize it as JSON. So I think this is compiled, and now we can check how this works. So curl http://localhost 3000. Oh, we haven't actually put this in the router. So CAPTCHA equals what was it? CAPTCHA controller with the HMAC key, which we also have not generated. So let me see. Do I have a helper to fetch base 64 encoded data? I do not. So I'm going to write a helper function. I'm going to call it function mask_getEnv base 64, name string, and it returns a byte, slice, and then we're going to fetch a value. So value equals must get environment, that's also my helper, and then bytes error equals base 64 standard encoding decode string value. If error is not nil, log fatal F failed to decode environment variable name as from base 64, and then the error, and the first is going to be name and the second one is going to be the error, and then we return the bytes otherwise. And then a variable, no, this is going to be a variable altcha hmac key is going to be must get in base 64 altcha hmac key. And then I'm going to generate this value and I'm going to put it in misetoml. So open SSL random value base 64, and I'm going to make it 32 bytes, and I'm going to remove the end line at the end of this value, and I'm going to copy it to the system clipboard so that I can open this miso.tom file and add it here. Altcha hmac key equals this value, and then I'm going to inject this hmac key in here, and then I can add a route, and I'm just going to make it an API route. So I'm going to call it API v1 challenge, and then it's going to be altcha challenge, like so. So now I have to restart mod because I added a new variable. So now the server compiles and runs, and now it still runs. Okay, and now I can make a request: curl localhost 3000 API v1 challenge. Okay, I'm going to format it like so. So we see that the challenge returned by the library includes an algorithm. So basically the challenge is just about making a lot of SHA-256 hashes with this salt, and this is going to be the result of a challenge. And then this is, I think this signature is computed by the server, just to prove that this challenge was indeed generated by the server. And I forgot about one thing, and that is I forgot about setting an expiration time. So I'm going to also add another constant here, const altcha challenge expiration time equals 20 minutes, like so. And this is just going to be 60 seconds. Okay, and then in the controller I'm going to add this expires field. Is going to be, oh, it's a pointer to a time, so expires at equals time now, add config altcha challenge expiration time, and then this is going to be a pointer, like so. So now if we run the query again, we can see that there is a new parameter in this salt, and that's the expiration time. And then whenever we validate a challenge, we're going to see if this expiration time is still valid, and if it's not, we are just going to reject the challenge. So I think this calls for a commit. JJ commit serve CAPTCHA challenges over the API. Great. And now that we have a challenge, we can think about integrating this library in our front end. So the front end is written using a component library called components. It's kind of like React, except that it's fast and it's for Go. It's pretty good. It's much nicer than Temple, which was a pain in the neck. And then yes, it's using Tailwind for styling, and it's basically mostly just plain HTML things. There is no JavaScript library, there is no JavaScript bundler, but I do have what was it called? I do have this Tailwind CSS CLI thing. And wait, what is here? Okay, yeah, I can delete this. Okay, yeah, good. So I have this Tailwind file. We're not going to be interacting with this file in this video. And then the only dependencies installed for Node are more or less build and development dependencies, and then I have a very simple Tailwind config, and then what have we? Yeah, that's more or less all we have in this file. And then I'm going to add a JavaScript file in here. I'm just going to call it app.mjs. And then in the router, I'm just going to hard code the route in here, app.mjs, and that's going to be app.mjs. So now if I curl localhost 3000 assets app.mjs, wait, did I get an actual response? Yes, okay. It was served, it's just an empty file. So I'm also going to instruct mod to restart oh no, I don't have to restart the server if the file changes, because it's not being cached by Go. Okay, great. So in the way you integrate the CAPTCHA library is where was it? Advanced widget integration. You need to install this CAPTCHA, you need to import this CAPTCHA library, and they are suggesting a JSDeliver option. This works, or we can use ESMSH. That's another one, and like both are hosted by Cloudflare, so it doesn't really matter. But with ESMSH I can use imports, so I'm just going to go with ESMSH. So this is going to be a JavaScript, HTTPS ESMSH CAPTCHA at 230, and then we're not getting prettier in here. This is because I'm editing this file in a wrong directory. MJS. Can you get prettier now? Nope. Prettier. Can we get prettier to even running here? Okay, assets. Okay, so it does work from here, but why doesn't it work in the editor? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Anyway, we import this file, and then in the form we're going to have to add a very simple component, and that's just going to be this CAPTCHA widget thing, and then we need to add a parameter called challenge URL, and then we can also configure the widget in many ways. So in this view, I'm going to add an element, and that's going to be CAPTCHA widget, and then I'm going to add an attribute called challenge URL, and that's going to be API v1 challenge, like so. So now if I go to the website and scroll down to this form, there is nothing. Okay, a few notes. This is because I have not imported the script, right? Script type module source assets app.mjs, and now when I reload, I'm getting this beautiful checkbox saying I'm not a robot, and we can later customize it. So do we have an ID on this? Yes, we do have an ID. So I'm going to set an ID on this element. So ID CAPTCHA, and then in this JavaScript file we can write document query selector CAPTCHA configure. Was it like this? I think I saw something similar. Configuration, maybe. Yeah, I think I saw something about this customization configuration. Yeah, so we should have a configure. So let's see if we get this configure working or not. So I think there was something called labels, and where translations. Yeah, this was much easier the last time I looked at the documentation. Widget customization, okay. Programmatic configuration. Okay, configure challenge this strings. Okay, strings label I am not a pesky clunker. And now let's see. This didn't work. Will it work? Wait, so query selector is not a function. Okay, maybe we need to run this after load. So window add event listener load, like so. And now, yeah, okay, this worked. It says, it now says I am not a pesky clunker. And then I'm going to quickly reformat this code because it was ugly. And what else? I wanted to, we can actually hide the branding, which and for that we don't even need JavaScript. We just need to add to parameters attributes hide logo and attribute hide footer, and then there is no logo and there is no footer. And then we can see that when we click on it, it makes a challenge to, it makes a call to this challenge API, and then it sets, I think it sets an input here, and this library sets a hidden input called CAPTCHA, and then this value is going to be this value is going to be a base 64 encoded JSON blob. So if we paste this to the console and then decode it, and then reformat it with JQ, then you can see that this was the challenge, this was the number that the genie was thinking of, and this was the salt, and this was the signature signature generated by the server, and then took, I think this this means it took the library 261 milliseconds to find the solution, which is decent for a browser. And then we're going to have access to this CAPTCHA parameter in the controllers, so then we can just verify this challenge. So yep, I'm going to restore the footer and the logo because they're actually pretty nice, but then I'm going to wrap this in a section tag so that it has a display block, and then we're going to have proper margins. And then what is the width on this? Okay, so width is 260 pixels. So I think we can define these on, oh, okay, we can just redefine this variable in CSS, like so. And that's going to be, wait, 260 pixels is 16.25 RAM. So I'm going to set it to 18 RAM. And then, why is this not set again? It's not defined? Is it not? Okay, well, maybe it's because this is just in a theme. So I'm going to set it on the root component, like so. And then okay, well, what about if I set it in layer base? Like so. Okay, maybe if I restart the server. Okay, this doesn't seem to be working great. Do I have this in the output? Do we have this in the output at all? Nope. Okay, I think there was something about it. We can say theme static, and then the variables we define in here will be generated no matter if they are used or not. So then, are we actually getting this? Okay. I'm not so great with Tailwind, you know. What if I set it on Alt-CHA max width on the HTML component? Why is this library not listening to me? Okay, so now we do have an Alt-CHA max width. It's just set to the exact same value. So I'm going to set it to 20 rem, which is much larger. And now it's much wider. Okay, great. And this seems to work. And now we're going to need to write a verification middleware. So right now, if we try posting a comment with this CAPTCHA, I think we're going to get an error. So test. I'm just going to submit it, and now we are getting an error from Gorilla Schema, which is a library I'm using to parse URL encoded forms. And this comes from the comments controller, where I have an instance of Gorilla Schema decoder. So I'm going to, instead of using a package global, I'm going to embed this decoder in the controller. So I'm going to call it schema decoder, and this is a pointer to decoder, and I'm going to just create it in here. I'm going to initialize it in here, schema new decoder, and I'm going to call a method on it called ignore unknown keys, and I'm going to set it to true. And then I'm going to embed it in here, decoder, and then we don't need this instance, and then we can replace this with a call to schema decoder. So now we can just resubmit it, and then this comment reappears. This comment appears, it was just saved to the database. And now this means that we are parsing those we are parsing those parameters, but we are not verifying this. And in order to prove it, I'm going to submit another request, another test, and it makes me check it, but I can assure it's not going to really look. So we can now take this request, we're going to copy it as curl, and I'm going to paste it here, and these are not really relevant. And then in data row I can just take this Alt-CHA part, and I'm going to remove it, and then we can just I'm just going to say this is bunkers, and then I'm going to send it. And now when we reload the page, there is a duplicate comment, and when I run the request again, there is another duplicate comment. So obviously this is not working, and I'm going to have to write a middleware. And in Echo, middleware is kind of similar to the way it works in other routers. So I could really just do it on the CAPTCHA controller, but I think this would be cheating, so I'm going to just write a separate time. So in package handlers, I do need a type. I don't think I need a type for now. Function verify CAPTCHA challenge, and this is going to take an HMAC key, which is a binary, and it's going to return a function that takes an echo handler function and returns an echo handler function. And then we can just straight up return this function in here, and then function. Yeah, so the way this, you know what, this is going to be too many parentheses when you do it like this. So I'm just going to write a type anyway. CAPTCHA. I'm just going to call it CAPTCHA middleware, and this is going to embed the HMAC key for now. And I'm going to write a constructor, and I think we can even use a new in the name. And this is going to take the HMAC key, which is a binary, and it's going to return a pointer to the middleware. And yep, and then I'm going to write a method on this middleware. I'm just going to call to use a pointer receiver, and I'm just going to call this function use, and it's going to take an echo handler function, and it's going to return an echo handler function. You return a function, and then firstly we are going to check if there is a payload, and that's going to be stored in the it's going to be in a form, and the form represents any values that the client may have sent in the request body in this URL encoded form. And then the parameter is going to be called CAPTCHA. So if the payload is empty, we can already just we can simply return echo new HTTP error, and this is going to be I think bad request, status bad request, and then we can send the error message as missing CAPTCHA payload, and then we can just return next. Next like so. And you know what, I think there is going to be a much more logic later on, so I'm going to create a service type, and I'm going to call it CAPTCHA service.go, and that's going to, and this is because later on we're going to need some database interactions, so I'm going to call this CAPTCHA service. And for now we just need the HMAC key, really. Wait. And maybe we could even do this list cost substitution thing, and I'm going to define this as an interface, and we're going to need a function called verify payload, and that's going to be and that's going to return a boolean and an error, and I think that's all. So we're going to create a new CAPTCHA service function, and it's going to take an HMAC key, which is a binary, and it's going to return an CAPTCHA service interface, and then we're going to return a pointer to its CAPTCHA service with an HMAC key of HMAC key. And now it's complaining because the CAPTCHA service does not implement the interface. So we can fix this by implementing this function called verify payload, and that's going to take the payload, which is a string, and it's going to return a boolean and an error. And for now we can just return false and no error. Or we can, we can define a custom error, and it's going to say var error invalid solution. That's going to be errors new invalid solution to the challenge, and we're just going to return this error no matter what. And then we're going to just store this service in the middleware. So this is going to be we're going to store this CAPTCHA service as an CAPTCHA service, like so, and then we can just store this CAPTCHA service as services new CAPTCHA service with the HMAC key, like so, and then we can verify the challenge. So OK error equals middleware CAPTCHA service verify payload string. If error is not nil, return echo new HTTP error, HTTP status bad request, and that's going to be just the error, like so. So now if we try to submit the form, my name is Carol, the comment is testing with validation, I'm not a pesky clunker, and I'm just going to submit the form, and something didn't work because we have not plugged the validation into the router. So let me see, we're going to need this in here. So is there like a group or something? Yes. Okay. I'm not going to add a prefix in here. Wait, how does this work even? Okay, I think I know. I'm just going to call this group, and this is going to G use yeah, this is the first time I'm using this echo middleware, you know, but this means I can just pass it on, I can just call post on in here, and then we will know that these are all behind a validation middleware. And then we have this CAPTCHA middleware, which is a new CAPTCHA middleware with config CAPTCHA HMAC key, and then we can just call use in here. So like so, okay. And then maybe wait, is this, what is the actual, okay, so a middleware function. What's a middleware function? Okay, so it's a function like this. So it has to return a function, but this means this means we can really just make it a function, can we not? Yeah, I think this is too complicated. Or is it? Is it not? Yeah, I know. I already did it the other way previously, but do I really want it to be a struct? Do I need to make it a struct? I don't have to make it a struct. I'm going to rename this to CAPTCHA middleware, or maybe even CAPTCHA validator. I'm just going to call it validate CAPTCHA, like so. And then we're going to have a service, and that's going to be a pointer. And then we don't need this struct anymore. And then this is going to be a function that takes a next echo contact. Oh, this is just going to return echo middleware function. So now return function, like so. And then we can put all the implementation inside. And then service is here. And then we don't need this struct anymore, and it's even simpler. So, and then we can just put this inside of here. Great. This is much nicer. And do I really need this group? Can I maybe make it a slash so it's more clear what it means? Let's see. I'm going to refresh this page. What if I rerun it with bonkers? Huh? Okay, what if I remove that slash? Okay, so now if I post this request with an invalid solution, it just returns 404. I'm guessing it's 404. You know, it's a 400 bad request. And this is because we are always, at this point, we are just always returning an invalid solution error. And so the remaining part we can do in here. We just return false always. And then, so the first part to verifying this payload is to decode it from base 64. So I'm going to call it bytes error equals base 64 standard encoding decode string payload. If error is not nil, you can just return false, error, then var parsed payload. This is going to be a struct called CAPTCHA payload, and then if error equals JSON decode, JSON unmarshal bytes to parse payload, error is not nil, return false, error. Great. So now we have a parsed payload, and then what else? We need to verify the solution. So it's going to be CAPTCHA verify solution, and I'm going to use this save option, which is, so this solution verify solution save, this is going to this verify solution save, it uses constant time comparison functions, which is what we would really want in a cryptographic setting, and then we want to check expires time. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, we can just use a parsed payload in here, and then yes, and then this is going to return okay and error. So, and then you can just return okay. So if error is, yeah, we can just return this CAPTCHA verify solution for now. There is going to be one more thing we're going to have to check. So now if we try to submit a solution, signature Carol, test with validation 2, and I'm not a pesky clanker, submit, and now this worked. Do I have a record of this request? I do have a record of this request, so I'm going to copy it as curl. So now the problem is that we can just fire all those requests ad infinitum, because there is no check. We're not checking if the solution has been reused. So for now, I'm going to commit validate CAPTCHA responses. Okay, and the next thing we are going to do is we're going to need to keep a cache of what was it, reused used solutions. So I'm going to create a new table in the database. I'm going to call it create used CAPTCHA challenges, and it's going to be create a table used CAPTCHA challenges, and this is going to have an ID which is integer, not null primary key, and this is the syntax we need to use in SQLite to have an incrementing primary key. And then it's going to be a challenge hash, and it's going to be a blob, not null unique, and then it's going to be an expires at, and I'm going to use a custom type name called Unix timestamp, but that's really in SQLite there are no types, and this is just a hint for SQL C to to know that we are going to store a Unix timestamp in here. So it's going to be not null, and then I'm going to add a created at Unix timestamp. Default value is going to be Unix epoch, and that's going to be a Unix timestamp. And then in the down section, I'm going to drop table used CAPTCHA challenges, like so. So now I goose up, and then in the queries part, no, in the SQL part, yeah, I'm going to call it challenges. So the first query we're going to need is going to be check if check reused validate challenge reuse, and that's going to return a boolean, and it's going to be, we're going to have to cast it as boolean. So as a cast exists, select one from used CAPTCHA challenges where challenge hash equals this parameter, and that's going to return a boolean. And because we run the cast in here, then SQLite is going to know that we are expecting a boolean, and then I'm going to run another query called insert used challenge, and it's going to return everything. Insert into used CAPTCHA challenges challenge hash, and what was it, expires at values 1 and 2, returning everything. Let's see, SQL generate. Okay, so now in the service we're going to need to inject a database, and that's going to be, no, we're going to inject queries, and that's going to be a pointer to queries, and that's going to be a queries dbtx interface, and then queries is going to be queries new db, like so. And then in verify payload, we're going to also need a context, and this is because wait, okay, so now this is going to need a context, like so. I had to also update the interface. So now in the payload, verify payload, I'm going to firstly I'm going to extract a timestamp, and I'm going to call it expires at error equals extract expires at from payload, and that's going to be a helper function I'm going to write here, and that's going to be a payload, which is going to be an CAPTCHA payload, and it's going to return a pointer to a timestamp, and it's going to return an error. So first params is going to be a result of the call to extract params, and that's going to be the payload. And the params is going to be a URL values, which is basically a map of strings to string slices. So I'm going to take the expires param, which is params get expires, and then if expires equals an empty string, return nil, and I'm going to add a new error, variable error, no timestamp, or expiration unset equals errors new expiration time not set in the challenge. This shouldn't happen really. That will be error expiration unset, and then timestamp is going to be time. No, first we need to fetch the Unix timestamp, which is going to be, whereas this is going to be a number. I need to parse it, and this is going to be a parse integer, and then expires base 10 and 64-bit integer. If error is not nil, return nil. And then you know what? I'm not really going to bother with these error constants, because I'm not going to be using these anywhere. So I'm just going to remove this errors new, and I'm just going to wrap the error. Like so, and then timestamp is going to be time Unix, and that's going to be seconds and no nanoseconds, and then return a pointer to this timestamp and no error. So then if error is not nil, return false and error. And then if expires at is after, no, is before, or is not after time now, then if it's before or after expires now, if it's before or equal to expires now, it means that the solution is expired. Or challenge expired. And then the last check is going to be, we need to check if the challenge has been reused. So reused error equals service queries, and then validate challenge reuse context and the challenge hash is going to be SHA-256 SAM-256 payload, and this payload is going to be a string, and then we need to cast it to a byte slice, and then the hash is going to be a 32 byte 32 element byte array. So I'm going to have to slice it like so. If error is not if reused or error is not nil and not errors is now if reuse or error is not nil, return false errors. Yeah, I'm just going to return invalid solution, you know. I'm just going to return invalid solution for everything. So if we can ensure that the solution has been reused, or if we failed to validate that it has not been reused, because for example the database is broken, then we just treat it as fake, as expired or invalid, and then we just err on the side of caution, and then finally we can make the validation as before, and then if error is not nil in here, we return false and invalid solution, because of course. And then we need to store the solution in the database. So query as queries insert use challenge context, and then queries insert use challenge params, and that's going to include the hash, and that's going to include the expires at, which is yeah, that's my custom type, like so. Yeah. What was time is going to be expires at, like so. So if we fail to insert it, just return false and error, and then we return okay nil. This was long, I know. So first we decode the payload, and we could actually move it to below, because this verify solution also takes a string payload, but if we already have it, then it's fine, I guess. And then we check if the expires. You know what? I don't need to check the expires at in here, because the library is going to do it for me. So I can just yeah, I don't have to do it here. I can do it later on. And then yep, I don't need to check it myself. I'm only going to use it after the solution has been verified to be true. So now, what else? Middleware does not have enough, so I'm going to have to also take a database connection, like so. And then the payload also needs a content request context. So now router. So now I also need a database connection, and now it works. So now if I try to send a to recreate and to create the same now if I try to reuse the same solution, I'm going to get an error, right? And I can see that if I open up the database and select everything, select everything from used CAPTCHA challenges, like so. So now we can see that this challenge hash is here, and we have an expires at set to whatever this time is. Let me see. Yeah, that's going to be in 2 minutes. And then finally I could probably write a function to delete old reused challenges, right? So name vacuum used challenges exec delete from used CAPTCHA challenges where expires at is less than Unix epoch. It's equals to generate, and then yeah, we could probably just run it in a cron. But you know what? I don't really. We could run it in a cron, or we could just run it when we started application. Like you know, queries new db vacuum. Vacuum use challenges with background context. So now select everything from used CAPTCHA challenges. It's still here. If I wait for like a minute, it's probably not going to be here. Yeah, this is annoying. Select everything from used CAPTCHA challenges. Yeah, there are none anymore. And this is because they have been vacuumed. They have been evaporated. Okay, I think this has been pretty great. And I hope you understood why everything was the way it was. Now finally, let's just check again if I can make a real post, right? So Carol https moros dev test after all is said and done. Am I recording? Yes, I am recording. I'm not a pesky clunker. Submit. And this is working. So now if I copy that request and try to replay it, I'm already getting an invalid solution because the comment has not been recreated. So yep, this has been the CAPTCHA demo video. Once again, you can get the sources for this tutorial on my GitHub. The repository is called Go CAPTCHA Video, and I'm also going to add a link to this repository in the video description and maybe a README if I'm feeling generous. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.